Coming up in this episode, where could you find 4 300SL Gullwings and no less than 6 300SL Roadsters, all in one place? Here in LA, of course, the City of Angels, where I've come out for a bit of a rest and a little bit of a jolly. But as soon as I arrive, I get a call from a friend. Can I go and help a guy out who's in distress? Oh well, so much for the rest. Award-winning movie editor Dan Lebenthal is responsible for films such as Elf, Ant-Man, The Breakup, Iron Man, 2 Spider-Man movies, and is currently editing the new Beverly Hills Cop movie starring Eddie Murphy.
All right, here it is.
Oh wow.
This is my baby. I've literally had this thing since the year 1990.
1990?
190 SL, Mercedes, 1958. And it has a very interesting story. I first met this car in about 1976. It had been restored by this woman in 1975, and it was her passion. She put a lot into it. She was the mother of a friend of mine in high school, and my friend got to drive this around in high school. If you can imagine pulling up in front of the class with this gorgeous car, the top down, and he would drive us. But I always thought it was the most gorgeous car I had ever seen, and I told her this.
And did she buy this new in 1958 or whenever it was new?
She did not. She bought it somewhere around 1970 and spent a few years restoring it. Right. And she put this paint job, which in 1975 it cost $5,000 for the paint job, which I don't know what it would be today, but I don't know any
50
car
grand?
would.
Would you pay 50 grand for the paint job?
I don't know about that.
So
I don't
she
know.
had
I'd
too
get a
much
new
money.
paint job every year instead. But anyway,
Sorry, Dan, was this initially red? Looks like it
I don't
might
know
have
if
been
that's
red.
primer or if
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the color it was. I don't know. But I met this car and it was like this, and it was pretty original, except they put a stereo in it. Then I replaced and put a different one in. So I see this car, I'm in high school, and I tell her, this is the most beautiful car I've ever seen. And she's very flattered because it's her passion. Years later, I get a call from her. I'm now in my late 20s, so I haven't seen her maybe in a dozen years or so. And she gets a hold of me somehow and says, I know how much you loved my car. And you used to tell me this, and she says, I'm retiring, I'm gonna move to Arizona, and I need to find a home for this car. And I thought you'd be the perfect person to take it. And I said, well, I'm just still beginning my career. I don't know if I can afford anything like this. And she said, don't worry about it, just pay me over however long you wanna pay me. And it was a very reasonable amount. I mean, probably more than a reasonable amount. And I did. I would send her a little money every month for about 7 years.
Wow.
For this thing. The only deal that she said is that I wasn't allowed to sell this car while she was still alive. Now, she made it to almost 100 years old and just passed away this year.
So you got sick of waiting?
I was like, but the funny thing is I got a call from her 2 years ago, and she said, how's my car? And you still have it, you remember our deal? And I said, of course, I would never sell this. I would never do that to
What a
you.
lovely story.
Yeah.
And it looks pretty original as well. It's got like the original leather in the seats, I think.
Yeah, she put a new top on, I think.
Yeah.
And
Still looks okay.
But yeah,
And I'm kind of surprised that she needed to restore the car. What was it, built 58, 59?
yeah, it's a
I think these were.
1958.
So, in this lovely warm climate, I'm really surprised that she needed to restore the car.
Yeah, well, in its glory when I first met it, it looked so beautiful. It was like a meteor.
Yeah.
So it's had to follow me to various garages and storage conditions.
It's part of you, part of your personality, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's the mileage on the engine?
Oh, I'm not even sure.
I bet you it's done a couple of 100,000 at least.
Yeah, it probably has. But these things are like tanks. I mean, once they're going, they just go, and it's like modern cars aren't built like that.
No, these are incredible. I mean, it's lasted her lifetime, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And it'll probably outlast you as well. I mean, it's a horrible thought, but it's a lovely thought as well.
Yeah, probably will. It's a work of art. I just want to see it up and running again, and it's.
So it's a non-runner.
Right now it is. It's just that in the pandemic it sat dormant for a few years.
Yeah, these cars don't like to be sat. And of course, with the modern fuels we've got today, there's a shelf life of maybe 3 or 4 months, and it just turns to varnish, and then you have problems with your carburetors, your tank, your fuel lines. I mean, but look, I'll have a go. I'll see what I can do. I'm not here long, but I'll have a good stab at it. But what worries me, Dan, and you're putting the pressure on me now, you said you want to get married in it next month.
I really do. Can you make it happen?
I doubt it, but I'll have a go. And listen, whatever I do on the car, whoever takes up the baton after me, if I don't get it up and running, then it'll save you a few $1,000, won't it? Because
well, that's beautiful.
I'll replace whatever needs replacing, and then I'll do as much as I can, and then whoever picks up the baton can carry on and
well,
take
that's
it to the
great.
next level. All right, Dan, look, have a good trip, and I'll do my best over the next few days.
All right, thank you so much.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Just take a look at this here. Now this is like, it's a valve to switch the fuel supply onto the reserve tank. When the tank gets really low, if you flick this little switch here, it puts it onto reserve, which means it sucks all the petrol that's left at the bottom and puts that through, probably with all the crap as well. These are infamous really because they've got like a little filter inside them, but it only gets the big pieces of rust or junk, whereas the powdery, small powdery bits of junk that you get in the fuel, it's almost like talcum powder. It doesn't really capture that, so that goes into your fuel system, and then your fuel pump gums up, and then you get untold problems. These cars are not great sitting up for any length of time. This was sitting up, I think, about 18 months. So the likelihood is I'm gonna have to replace the fuel pump, which is here, and replace this because you can see it's leaking. You can see the fuels being pissing out here. Now these have a little cork gasket inside them. And when that starts to like perforate or go hard, then the seal is compromised again. If there's any air in the system, you'll just see fuel pissing out of the side of this. So both of those need replacing really, and I think the pump is about $350, and I think these are $150. So right away, just on a first glance, it's a little bit more involved than you would think. Like normally, if this was a straight 6 Mercedes, I'd have it going by now, but they had all these little safety measures and little trinkets and little bits and bobs and switches on the 50s ones, and I think all these were kind of done away with later on. This pump, I mean, I might be wrong, but it could be the wrong fuel pump, because if I remember rightly, they had like a lever on the back that it works off a cam in the engine, and you've got to get it on the cam, and then you can feel resistance, and when you do this with it, you pull it back and forth, it takes all the air out of the system and puts the fuel through. It primes the fuel, if you like. So these are the main fuel lines coming off the tank, and then it goes through this one, then through this one, and then it feeds the carburetors. But let's get stuck in. First port of call, the carburetors. Now for some reason this is fitted with Webers, twin Webers. These were designed to run on Solex carbs, and they don't run quite as well on the Webers. So for some reason the previous owner, or somewhere down the line, they fitted Webers, probably because they were cheaper. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open the top, see if there's fuel in both of them, and we'll just go from there. Make sure you don't lose your seals, because you never find them again. As you can see, completely dry. This all seems good. See the needle's coming up and down in there, but it's sticking a little bit, as you can see. That should drop down, that needle there, and it's not for some reason, so all this needs to be cleaned out. So if that stays up, it's just not going to do its job. And as you can see here, there's 3 seals. The 2 are completely different, but the 4th one's missing. So obviously there's been some other work done by another mechanic and it's been lost. So even if we got the car up and running, the likelihood is it'd be pissing petrol out of the pipes that feed the carburetors. I'll have to get a few of those. So what I'm going to do now, I've shown you what we've got in the engine bay. I've moved to the rear of the car. Now underneath here, you should have the fuel sender unit, which is here. I'm going to take this out, I'm going to get a torch in there, I'm going to see the state of the petrol, how clean it is inside the tank, because I'll tell you now, before I even start this, it's going to be full of junk. There we go. Now this is your fuel sender unit and it all looks like it's working perfectly, but you can only tell, you can't see what's going on inside here. It doesn't look too dirty, but it's got like a thin layer of like a kind of reddish coloured rust inside, and that all accumulates and sort of builds up at the bottom of the tank where the feed is, and it gets sucked into the fuel lines, it blocks the fuel lines, and then ultimately your carburetors, and that's where the fuel filters get blocked, the lines get blocked, and then the carburetors. And carburetors love clean fuel and being totally spotless inside, which because it's sat over for a while, that's what happens. So with the list of parts required, I head off to the Mercedes-Benz Classic Centre in Long Beach, about an hour's drive south down the coast, where after a phone call and a little persuasion with their manager Mike, he's allowed me to take a little sneak preview behind the scenes. The Mercedes-Benz Classic Centre is part of Mercedes-Benz for restoring and preserving old Mercedes models. It was first opened on May the 18th, 1993 in Fellbach, Germany, outside Stuttgart. A second location was opened in June 2006 in Irvine, California. This one has recently relocated to Long Beach. Apart from the earliest Benzes ever produced, the first thing that hits me when I walk in is the rare prototype C111, which was originally developed with the rotary engine. This one was fitted, I'm told, with a V8. Like a kid in a sweet shop. Hiya, I called up before and ordered some parts.
I got all your parts ready for a 190 SL.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Here we go.
Thank you. Check. Yep. That's the baby. I've got to have a look around. It'd be rude not to just come through here. Wow. I mean, where else would you find 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 300 SL Roadsters? Just come and have a look at the engine on this. That's absolutely incredible. It's like a rocket ship, isn't it? So over here we've got a 280 SE Cabriolet, which is, this has got the 3.5 engine. I know I did a 220 SE, which is an identical car to look at bodily, and internally. But this has got the 3.5 V8 engine in. Now, these were the top of the range. And I think to buy one of these now, you're looking at £300,000, which is phenomenal money really, but as you can see, they're a phenomenal car. I mean, look at the interior in this. It's very similar to my one. It's got the cognac leather in, which was a top order. But over here, they all have the walnut bare air conditioning system in, which are probably not great by today's standards, but at the time, they were pretty state of the art. Look at this 300 SL Roadster. It's got no engine at the moment, but look at the quality of the work that's being done on it. It's absolutely flawless. If you bought one of these back in the day and you still had hold of it, you know, they're over £1 million, these. There's another one, mid-restoration. It's got the original red leather interior in. I don't know whether they're going to keep the original interior, but again, look at the quality of the work. It's second to none. Beautiful paint job. And it's difficult to paint a car in this climate because of the humidity in that. It's really difficult on, you know, today's modern paints to get a finish like that. A 300 SL Goldwing. What a wonderful little rocket ship. I was always a bit dubious about these though, because imagine having a crash in one of these and you turn it over on its roof. How's you get out? You'd have to kick the back window out or something, wouldn't you? Because once it's on its roof, them doors are never going to open. It's got the knock-on wheels as well, the Rudge wheels. And they were, I mean, when you look at the paperwork on one of these, if you're buying one, it'll specify in the logbook, you know, and all the paperwork, what was actually ordered at the factory when it was bought new. You know, sometimes the Rudge wheels were an add-on, a very expensive add-on. Sometimes they came with them because they were specified by the new owner. I mean, look at that. Look at the fit of the grille. It's absolutely flawless. There's a lot of work gone into that. Building it out or just having it so that it just sits beautifully in. No gaps. No, you know. That's difficult to do, really difficult to do to that standard. But I suppose if you have one of these cars done, you know, look at that little thing here, Bosch in the chrome. That's originality, that. And look at this one over here. This is super, super rare. So it's another 300 SL Roadster, but it's got the super rare hardtop. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a hardtop on one of these. So this lifts off and you've got the convertible hood underneath here. Very simple, easy to lift up and click into place. I mean, look at the jewellery inside there. That interior is just gorgeous. I love the silver with the chrome as well. Just look at the back end on this. Look at this. It's just like jewellery. Look at that beautiful backlight, the curve of the back bumper. What a piece of art. A fishtail exhaust. There's another Gullwing, and this has got the special luggage as well. That's worth an absolute fortune. And again, it would have been ordered new with the car, and it stayed with it, which is lovely. And in some of them, you see like these kind of tartan seats, which, you know, was very typical of the Gullwing. I mean, you see a lot of them with leather, but just look at them seats. They're gorgeous, and they carried that style of seat right the way through to the 107s, you know, the 107 SLs of the 70s and the 80s. A bit gregarious, but I like it. Over here we've got a 280 SL Pagoda. As I said, I used to have a 230 one of these when I was like 25 years old. It was cream with a blue hood. But just look at the detail on this engine. Every screw, every nut and bolt. I mean, look at this. Fortunes. You see a lot of these polished up, but this is the way they're meant to be. It's like a dull grey. That's what they were originally. See the side of the block, the way it's painted black? Maybe on the 280s it was. I think mine was red on my 230 SL. And see, just being able to find the likes of the right material to do the bulkhead and all those little details are what count. I remember finding a couple of these. See the back grille? It's like a light alloy. I found a couple of these with weeds growing through them at the back of my garage. Threw them on eBay. I think I got about 600 quid for them. That's how rare, how scarce the parts are and how expensive they are. Beautiful. See this exhaust off this? I mean, look at the length of it. It's got to be 18 feet long. I think the longest exhaust I had, there was one each side on the 600 limousine, and it was a bit longer than this, both sides. And I think for each side it was about £4,000. I mean, you know, but you've got to do it properly. You can't really stick pattern parts on them. You can, but then, you know, you take the price of what the car's worth down because of its originality or lack of it. But where else are you going to find cars like this? Anywhere. Stuttgart maybe, or Belgium. Real treat. A rare treat. Anyway, let's get these parts back, shall we? Get stuck in. Thanks, Mike. At the Classic Centre, they tell me that the fuel pump is no longer available. So after shelling out $500, and a 2-hour drive later, I'm redirected to Vintage Euro Parts, which supply an aftermarket part, which is also ethanol friendly, which is probably the better option in a way, as these modern fuels seem to rot the seals in the old ones. And to my surprise, inside I find 2 further 190 SLs under reconstruction. Always good for checking things out for points of reference. So armed with all the parts I need, it's back to the shop to get stuck in. So really, well and truly, to do this job properly, I need to drop the tank and clean it out, or replace it for a new one, as well as blowing all the fuel lines through with compressed air. And because of Dan's lack of tools, in some half-assed attempt to improvise, I try and remove the lug at the bottom of the tank to get rid of all the stale fuel. Unfortunately, I need the correct tool, which is a large hex or Allen key, like this one I have at home. It fits in here, then with a large bar, the stubborn lug is easily removed. A new fuel line, fuel pump, the condenser, the rotor arm, and that filter and reserve valve. So remember I mentioned earlier about that cork gasket with the fuel filter? I'm just intrigued to see what it's like inside. Let's open this up and take a look. And if you take a look here, you can see exactly why it's been drawing air into the system and leaking fuel. See the split in the cork there? See, in a job like this, it's simply a process of elimination. So with the new one fitted, well, that's one issue dealt with. Now with the filter in place, I'm going to fit this. I'm going to spin this on, and on the fuel pump itself, I'm going to take the fittings out before I undo the fuel pump, because I haven't got a vise here, so I'll leave it in situ and then I'll be able to undo the tight nut. Now looking at the difference in the old and new fuel pumps, it seems that the previous mechanic has fitted the more basic, cheaper version. This is the original style one with the primer on. So we'll swap those fittings over. Oh, typical 17mm spanner's missing. And we flied it open, just to top it all. I'll just move the cam out the way for ease of fitment. Oh, here's a loose wire. I don't know what that's for. But make sure this is connected up. See this rod here? This goes directly to the switch under the dash, which switches it over to the reserve tank. Next, I'm going to check the ignition. I'm going to swap this rotor arm out. But first, I'm going to check whether there's a spark. So with the ignition on, I'll move the points on the cam, and there you go, that's a nice spark. I know the old one's a little bit worn out, but see the difference between the aftermarket and the original? The original was $150 by the way, as opposed to 12. Then the spark plugs come out and I give them a thorough clean. Okay, so I've taken the spark plugs out. I've let it kind of breathe a little bit overnight in case there's any fuel in there, in case it was flooded. So these are nice and clean now. These are Bosch plugs. I'd sooner use NGK. These use the W7 DC, same as what the Pagodas use. I've never been a big fan of Bosch. I kind of prefer NGK. They kind of burn hotter. Anyway, let's get them back in. I'll see if we can get it started. So without the proper spark plug wrench, once again, I'm going to do a little bit of improvisation with an adjustable spanner. Yeah, as I say, I much prefer the NGK BP6ES. They just seem to stay clean, and the way these engines run on the initial startup because of the cold start mechanism, these engines run rich, so if you let the car idle instead of driving it straight away, these plugs just soot up and then you get a misfire and then all the other problems begin. But that's concerning injection cars rather than carburettor, and these look fairly new anyway. Back in with the vacuum hose. I fit a brand new original condenser. You know, for such a small part, it's actually quite important. If these fail, it can cause anything from a misfire to a car that just simply won't start. And I think if you're going to these lengths, you're best just replacing it anyway. So in the absence of a brand new or cleaned out petrol tank, I'm just going to top it up with a few gallons of high octane fuel. Look, this isn't ideal, but it might just give us a fighting chance. So it's back in with the fuel sender gauge and nip it up nice and tight so there's no airlocks and we can prime the system up properly. And just take a look at these. Workshop manual, the big workshop manual, absolutely priceless. All with the car. All genuine. I mean, just look at these receipts. There's literally tens of thousands of dollars worth of receipts. Every single job that's been done on the car since new. Well, these have got to stay with it. Everything together. So as you can see here, again, a bit of a makeshift repair. If you remember, the choke cable was snapped in two. So I've just improvised yet again and just joined it up. This should suffice for now. Top the carbs up with fresh fuel. Prime the pump, which takes a while. Now what I'm going to do is, I've been pumping this for about 5 or 10 minutes now. I know it's come through to this one on the right. I'm just making sure it's come right through to this one on the left. So I'm just going to crack the nut. And there you go, look at that, it's pissing out. So there you go, we're good. The fuel's coming through. It's all nice and primed, so hopefully, fingers crossed, we should have a run it. Nearly there, but a best way for Dan.
Sounds like dirty fuel to me. That's normally the telltale sign, the little spitting out and...
Almost.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, not quite. But it's a decent start, and since then, Dan has ordered new carburettors and a brand new fuel tank. So as I've run out of time here, and like I said before, if he doesn't get the job finished, then next time I'm over, I'll finish the job for him. So watch this space. Thank you for watching this episode of Classic Obsession. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and see you all next time.